If you're an American and you're thinking about moving to Canada, you can relax. We're not mad at you. Seriously though, ever since the US election last January, search traffic for things like move to Canada, how to move from USA to Canada, and Canadian immigration policies has skyrocketed. And this is something that happens every time there's a big political moment in the US, and it's continued to grow as a trend throughout the past 12 months as the situation in the United States has progressed. The thing is, there's a big difference between what people expect will happen when they want to move to Canada and reality. And in this video, we're going to unpack the truth, the reality, and I'm also going to give you some tips if you're actually considering relocating. I'm Sean P, and I'm a real estate expert who lives in Victoria, BC. And on this channel, we post videos every week to help you understand how to better navigate our market and our country. If you find this useful, please like and subscribe. It gives us a huge boost, and it means that you won't miss anything else we have coming up. And as well, if you have plans to move to Canada or anything involving real estate, I'd love to help. I'm literally a real estate broker. And so you can use the link in the description to jump some time into my calendar. We can have a discussion about your plans. Let's actually dig in though, because there's a lot to cover. Now, before we start myth busting all of the concerns that people have when moving to Canada from the US, I just want to reiterate that this is not a minor spike in interest. So after the 2025 elections results last January, we saw move to Canada related search terms jump somewhere between 400% and 3,000%, just depending on what the search term is in question. Canadian immigration-based websites saw traffic originating from the United States jump from around 35,000 unique visitors per day to almost 300,000 unique visitors per day. So this is on a lot of people's minds. And the first thing that I want to start this video out by talking about is that we've actually had a spike in searches related to how Americans will be received when visiting or moving to Canada. Myth number one, Canadians don't want Americans moving here. Well, this just isn't true. Canadians and Americans have been best buddies forever. Now, what is true though is that Canadians are generally pretty unified in not enjoying the political climate in the US, and in particular, the fact that it is affecting us currently. So that's one thing to be aware of. However, that doesn't translate into any kind of anger towards an individual. It's just a background reality. If anything, the tone is more that we're concerned for you guys. It's kind of like if your best friend growing up had parents who were going through a messy divorce. You might not stay there for a while, but you'd still want to stay best friends. Myth number two, Americans moving to Canada are just political tourists. Well, this one I'm actually going to give a yes and a no. We do see a lot of people who are moving currently to Canada because of the fact that they just don't feel like their values are in alignment with American politics anymore. They also might be moving because they just don't feel as comfortable in their community as they used to. We see a lot of LGBTQ and ethnic minorities and stuff like that, putting a little bit more emphasis on the speed behind which they plan their move. What isn't true though is that this is a reactive emotional decision. People who move to Canada aren't the ones who are sharing emotional rants on social media where the only option left is to move to Canada. These people tend to be the loudest voice in the room, but they're rarely the ones who come across the finish line. More we see the methodical types, the people who spend their time and make the applications and do their research. It's a lot of work. We're talking about uprooting your family, selling your things, reformatting your financial situation, often searching for a new job. It's not something that people are really able to do reactively, at least not in the long term. And so it tends to be people who are financially comfortable. They have a job that provides for flexibility from where they work, or maybe a job that they can transfer to a Canadian office. We do see a lot of people moving here essentially because they feel like they've lost touch with what drew them to the United States, and because they feel like the values of Canadians are more in alignment with them. So we see a lot of people who value healthcare, proximity to nature and recreation, people who want walkability and community. The same things that draw Canadians to the cities we choose to live in are often the things that draw Americans here as well. Myth number three, it's easy to move to Canada if you're an American. Well, it's not necessarily that it's hard, but there is due process. In Canada, for the past 8 to 10 years, we've had our immigration gates wide open and we brought lots of new Canadians into the country. With that said, that is no longer really the case. And so we do have a limit to the number of people who we welcome to Canada every year. And that applies to our American friends just like anyone else. There's also due process to follow. And what we find is that people moving to Canada from the United States have many options, but there's a few that tend to stand out as the most common. The first one being employer-sponsored work permits. So if they are part of your application process to move here, that can really help because it shows that you're filling a role that's needed and that might not be as easy to fill with another Canadian. The next one that we see often is intercompany transfers. So you work for a large organization and they ask you to come work in a Canadian branch. This is a great way to start the process of emigrating into Canada. The third one is spousal sponsorship. So this would be if you were in a relationship with a Canadian citizen and the two of you wanted to come back. That is a very high success rate for people who want to become permanent residents and eventually Canadian citizens because you're part of the family already. Now, we also have work visas and stuff like that for younger people, and we let a certain number in every year, but that's a little bit more of a lottery, and often it's not going to apply in the same sense to someone who's actually trying to put down roots. It's more temporary. So to answer this question, essentially, yes, it's possible, but there's due process to follow. And often you need to lead with your job being the anchor that you set in order to help pull yourself in. Myth number 4, if you can live here, you can buy real estate here. Well, this is often not true. Canada still has a foreign buyer ban in place. It runs until January 1st, 2027. And it stops non-Canadians from purchasing real estate in cities of over 10,000 people. Now, that's often going to be where people moving here are going to want to set up. And so it's something that sounds scary, but the reality is it's aimed to deter speculative investors, people who are putting money in our real estate market from afar and have no intention of moving here. It's not actually intended for people who are relocating their lives here. So there are a lot of exemptions. You check the fine print for yourself, but just know that chances are if you relocate yourself, your family, and get jobs and set up as part of the community, chances are you'll be able to buy real estate. It's not going to stop you. More than likely, it will just delay things. Finally, currency exchange and capital gains matter more than most people expect. Think about it. If you're moving $1 million over to purchase property in Canada, the rate that you exchange it at, moving a few points, will have a considerable difference when the money arrives on the other side. So keep a close eye in the months leading up to your transfer. Capital gains is another one. If you are a non-Canadian resident and you're disposing of property, well, you can expect that funds will get withheld from the sale until you settle all your taxes. A lot of Americans expect that they'll be able to just cash out, but it doesn't quite work that way. So speak to your accountant so that you know exactly what to expect. Okay, that's it. Now, I just want to recap the most important point. Are Americans welcome in Canada? Yes, absolutely. And living amongst Americans and having American visitors is not new to Canadians. We share the largest border in the world, and we continue to be best friends just like we always have been. It's just that politically, there's a bit of a rough patch we've got to work through. We would love to have you come visit. And if you're considering buying real estate here, you should use the link in the description to get in touch with me because I would love to help. And we work with a lot of Americans to make sure they settle into the best neighborhood and get the best property they can. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Use the link in the description to get in touch with me. And if you haven't already, you should like and subscribe to this video so you don't miss what we are working on next. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.